So it's been a few days since the last recording, just because I'm still trying to get back into the mindset of working at regular times. At the minute, I'm trying out a system where, because currently I'm staying up a lot later than I normally would because my partner is also here and he's quite a night owl. And then I'm getting up and not starting work until 1 o'clock-ish. So what I'm trying to do is I think I worked out that if I was going to class, I would be working for 5 hours, I think, because it's 10:30 till 1 is, well, that's 3 hours, and then lunch, and then another 3 hours till the end of the day. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to do a 3-hour slot and then take a break and then another 3-hour slot. So I'm still, even if it means I'm working at 10 o'clock at night, and it's not I'm not getting as much work in as I would have done normally, because normally I'd come home and I'd continue working. It just means I'm still getting that sort of class time slot in, so that's what I'm currently trying to do. I had a tutorial with Emma on last Friday, I think, on the 3rd. We basically sort of just had a catch up and sort of caught up with where I was. We've agreed to do a sort of mini deadline for the Alice dress on the 10th, so the Friday after, just because I'm the amount of time that I'm actually able to work is a lot smaller now, and I need to really get on with Starlight Express, even though I've still got Alice that needs working on. So what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and get Alice as finished as possibly, as much as I can, and then send photos to Emma on Friday, so it's that's done. I don't need to touch that anymore. I'm sort of going off the basis of if I was working for someone, I would have a deadline, I would have to meet it regardless, so that's the sort of thing I'm trying at the minute. The mannequins did arrive. The male mannequin's a weird shape. I don't like it. It has abs, but there we are. It's currently the shoulder is the right sort of width for the Alice costume, but the chest and the waist and everything else is really not big enough. So I'm gonna have to pad that out at some point. But for now, because I'm working on the sleeves, it's doing okay. So what I've done is I haven't had a chance to cut the net yet for the sort of inner part of the sleeve to help it puff out, but what I wanted to do was to properly pleat up the outer sleeve to get a idea of how full the net needs to be. And I obviously, the last recording, I tried to do that and it didn't work out because I didn't have the mannequin. So I now have the mannequin. What I did was I basically pleated it on the stand, so I pinned where the side seam met the underarm seam, and then pinned the top of the sleeve cap with the shoulder seam, and then just sort of pleated it down by eye, and it's worked a lot better this time. There's 2 pleats towards the front and then 3 towards the back, but it's even and it's sort of along the top of the shoulder as much as it can be, so that's worked out a lot better. And then I have tacked it down the same way that I tacked down the skirt and the ruffle, so that the pleats are now sort of set. And then I copied that for the other sleeve as well. So now they are tacked into the armholes so that I could see how they sit, and they are quite even, and I'm quite pleased with them. The only thing is that because of how the sleeve cap, when it's got something in it, it's going to push it upwards, which means that the cuff part of it is now at a slant, and I'm not quite sure how to fix that. What I should have done, because I've been watching Foundations Revealed have put out a sleeve setting workshop, which is more geared towards Victorian and historical sleeves and a little bit of tailoring. But I still found it interesting to watch, and what I should have done was I should have done a toile of the sleeve before I cut it out and sewed all the lace on and everything, because then I would have seen that the thing would have a slant, and then I could have fixed it and then potentially put more volume into it, because while it's a good shape, it's not as much volume as maybe I was sort of imagining. But for now it's fine. I don't know quite what to do about this cuff section. because the way it is now, if I have the cuff where the hemline was originally supposed to be, there would still be a lot of like puff under the arm, which might be okay, but it's going to be difficult to like keep that up there. So I think the cuff is going to naturally want to sort of tilt upwards. What I could do is I could even it out a little bit. Now it's on the stand, but I think I need to get the undersleeve done and in so that I can get a proper gauge of it. So what I'm doing at the minute is I'm going to cut out the net strips. I'm going off a basis of 10 centimetres because that's the strip that I did the test pleat on. So I'm just going to cut that out. And I'm also going to use, there was a section of net when I was cutting out for the petticoat that had like holes and weird creases, and there were a couple of oil marks on it. I'm going to use that section of net because it's a lot of net and it's not going to be usable for the petticoat. So if it's inside the sleeve, then it's not going to be wasted. And it doesn't really matter if the net's got a few holes in it because it's not going to be seen, it's just for structure. So that's what I'm going to be doing today, and hopefully I can get the sleeves in. So at the minute I now have, today, Wednesday and Thursday, maybe Friday morning, and then I've got to take pictures, so I've got maybe 2.5 days-ish to get this done by the mini deadline, but I'm fairly confident I can get that done. The skirt now has the waistband and all the closures at the back. That was a little bit tricky because obviously there was the issue with the sides of the plackets being uneven. So what I did was I made a Petersham waistband the same way that we made the tutu waistband, and the same way that I saw they were made when I was doing my work experience. So it's got the elastic inserts, and then it sort of folds around at the back to it's sewn on the inside of the skirt, and then the outside is covered with it was covered in bias binding with at work experience. But what I did was I used the same blue chiffon I used for the inside of the placket, interfaced it, and then used that, which I was a little bit worried about because it was quite flimsy, and there's quite a large step where the skirt pleats sort of end and then the rest of the Petersham waistband happens. I did consider top stitching it, but I think for the purposes of I think it's fine how it is. So I also decided to just trim down the top of the skirt seam allowance, just to make it even all the way around. I think looking back on it, I think the most likely place for altering it in any sort of length wise would be at the hem. I don't think the waistband is going to be touched very much except for maybe letting it out a little bit, but even then it's fairly easy to do. So what I've done is I've done 2 rows of strong stitches to hold the skirt to the waistband so that it doesn't fall off. And then I've also sort of done the top stitching along the top edge so that the chiffon sort of holds it all in place. No, I didn't. I top stitched the before I put the chiffon on, I sewed a top stitch line for the top of the ruffles to sort of flatten them out a little bit, trimmed it down to that line, and then put the chiffon over the top. So it should be fairly secure now, although that does make it, there's 3 rows of stitching to take out if it needs to be altered, but I think honestly it's more likely to be, because it's the same size as the bodice, it's not likely to be needed to be altered unless it needs to be taken out. So I think that should be fine, because it's also going to be suspended inside the bodice, so it's not an anchor point, it's just a holding it up thing. So it should be strong enough to deal with all that. So for the rest of today, the goal is to get the sleeves set and in, and sorting out the inner parts.